Washington, D.C., December 1985. The phone lines of the U.S. Marshals Service were buzzing with an audacity that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Over 3,000 invitations had been mailed out. The responses were flooding in. Fugitives, murderers, armed robbers, drug traffickers were voluntarily confirming their attendance to what they believed would be the party of a lifetime. What these criminals didn't know was that they were walking straight into the most brilliantly orchestrated trap in American law enforcement history. The problem that wouldn't go away. By the mid-1980s, the U.S. Marshals Service faced a crisis that was spiraling out of control. The Washington, D.C. metropolitan area alone had over 3,000 fugitives with outstanding warrants roaming the streets. These weren't just petty criminals who'd skip bail on minor charges. These were dangerous individuals, murderers who'd walked away from crime scenes, armed robbers who'd terrorized communities, and drug traffickers fueling the cocaine epidemic that was tearing through American cities. Traditional manhunt methods were failing spectacularly. Officers would spend weeks tracking down a single fugitive, only to find an empty apartment or a tip that led nowhere. The fugitives had gone underground, constantly moving, using fake names, staying with friends and family who'd never rat them out. Door-to-door searches were dangerous, time-consuming, and expensive. Officers were getting injured. Resources were being drained. And the fugitives? They were still out there. The Marshals Service needed something different, something unprecedented. They needed to make the fugitives come to them. Enter Operation Flagship. U.S. Marshal Michael Peasy stared at the problem from every angle until a wild idea began to form. What if, instead of chasing these criminals through dangerous neighborhoods and dark alleys, they could lure them into a controlled environment? What if they could exploit the one thing that might override a fugitive's natural paranoia? Greed. The plan was insane. It was unprecedented. It violated every conventional wisdom about how fugitives behaved. It was also absolutely genius. The Marshals created a fake company called Flagship International Sports Television Incorporated. This wasn't some half-hearted front operation. They went all in. They rented office space. They printed professional letterhead. They created a complete corporate identity that could withstand scrutiny. The company's supposed business? Sports promotion and entertainment. Then came the invitations. Each fugitive received an official-looking letter explaining that they'd won an all-expenses-paid trip to a champagne brunch and an exclusive VIP party. The prize package included free tickets to an upcoming Washington Redskins or Cincinnati Bengals game. All they had to do was show up at the Sheraton Washington Hotel on the morning of December 15th, 1985, to collect their winnings. The Marshals held their breath. Would anyone actually fall for it? The responses started pouring in. The devil in the details. What made Operation Flagship truly brilliant wasn't just the concept. It was the meticulous attention to detail that went into selling the illusion. Every element was designed to overcome a fugitive's natural suspicion. The invitations didn't come from a government agency or anything that would raise red flags. They came from a legitimate-looking sports promotion company. The offer wasn't too good to be true, just good enough. Free tickets and a party were exactly the kind of prizes companies gave away in the 1980s. The fugitives had seen similar promotions before. The Marshals also timed it perfectly. They scheduled the operation for Sunday morning when the Redskins were playing, making the football tickets seem timely and valuable. They chose the Sheraton Washington, a real hotel with genuine ballroom facilities. Nothing about the setup screamed trap. But here's where it got truly devious. They didn't just wait for fugitives to show up. They had staff, all undercover officers, making follow-up calls to confer attendance. These weren't threatening calls. They were friendly reminders from enthusiastic company representatives, making sure the winners didn't forget their big day. The fugitives were being personally courted. Their egos were being stroked. And one by one, they were confirming they'd be there. December 15th, 1985, the trap springs. The ballroom at the Sheraton Washington was transformed into a scene of celebration. Champagne bottles lined the tables. A buffet spread worthy of a genuine VIP event filled one wall. Cheerleaders in full uniform practiced their routines. The Flagship Sports mascot, An officer in an elaborate costume bounced around greeting guests. Every waiter was a U.S. Marshal. Every cheerleader was a trained law enforcement officer. The mascot was armed. The photographer capturing memories of the event was documenting evidence. The friendly staff, checking names at the door, were running each arrival against warrant databases. The first fugitives began arriving around 9 a.m. They walked through the hotel lobby, dressed in their Sunday best, excited about their free football tickets and champagne brunch. Some brought girlfriends. Others brought family members. They mingled, laughed, grabbed drinks from waiters who smiled and nodded while memorizing faces and confirming identities. The atmosphere was deliberately chaotic and festive. Music played. The cheerleaders performed. The mascot posed for photos. The fugitives relaxed, their guard completely down. This was real. This was happening. They'd actually won something. And then, exactly as planned, the doors locked. From minutes of chaos, what happened next unfolded with military precision. At the predetermined signal, over 100 U.S. Marshals dropped their cover simultaneously. Waiters revealed badges. Cheerleaders pulled out handcuffs. The mascot removed his headpiece. In less than 4 minutes, the party turned into the largest mass arrest in U.S. Marshal Service history. The fugitives' reactions ranged from stunned disbelief to absolute panic. Some tried to run, only to find every exit blocked. Others simply froze, unable to process what was happening. A few even laughed, almost impressed by the sheer audacity of the operation. Not a single shot was fired. Not one officer was injured. Not one fugitive escaped. The final count: 101 fugitives arrested without incident. Among those captured were individuals wanted for murder, armed robbery, sexual assault, and drug trafficking. Combined, they faced over 1,400 years in outstanding prison time. These were dangerous criminals who'd evaded capture for months or years, and they'd walked voluntarily into custody because of free football tickets. The aftermath and legacy. Operation Flagship made headlines across the country. The media couldn't get enough of the story. Late-night comedians made it part of their monologues. The public was simultaneously amused and reassured that law enforcement could be this creative and effective. But beyond the publicity, Operation Flagship fundamentally changed how law enforcement approached fugitive apprehension. The operation proved that with intelligence, creativity, and meticulous planning, dangerous fugitives could be captured safely and efficiently. The ruse arrest became a standard tactic, replicated by law enforcement agencies nationwide. The psychological impact was equally significant. Fugitives across America suddenly became paranoid about anything that seemed too good to be true. Free tickets? Suspicious. Contest winnings? Probably a trap. That anxiety made them harder to lure, but also made them more isolated and easier to track through traditional means. Marshal Michael Peasy and his team received commendations and awards. More importantly, they'd removed 101 dangerous criminals from the streets without endangering a single civilian or officer. The genius of human nature. At its core, Operation Flagship succeeded because it understood a fundamental truth about human psychology. Greed and ego can override even the strongest survival instincts. These fugitives weren't stupid. They'd successfully evaded capture for months or years. But when presented with something they felt they deserved, recognition, luxury, VIP treatment, their judgment faltered. The operation didn't rely on advanced technology or unlimited resources. It relied on understanding human nature and exploiting it perfectly. That's what made it genius. 35 years later, Operation Flagship remains the gold standard for creative law enforcement. It's studied in training academies, referenced in tactical planning sessions, and remembered as the day 101 criminals walked voluntarily into handcuffs because they couldn't resist free football tickets. The lesson? Sometimes the best trap isn't the one you force criminals into. It's the one they choose to walk into themselves. What do you think? Would you have fallen for the invitation? Drop your thoughts below.